Block 26 of the Tunisian Sampler Afghan is the pear drop block, and this is a series of pear drop clusters. Each cluster takes 5 rows and 5 stitches across. Row 1, you make the pear drop itself for the inner and outer portion of the cluster. Row 2 does the inner pear drop. Row 3 is just a simple stitch row for spacing. Row 4 handles the stem for the 2 outer pear drops, and then row 5 handles the pear drop stem for the middle pear drop. And I'll explain the spacing on the block itself for each of these clusters here in a minute, but first let me show you how they're done. So row 1, and I've already got one on here. I didn't want to start at the very beginning because of the curling, the curling that occurs when you do this. So with row 1, we're going to do 4 simple stitches just to get towards the middle here. And now on basically the 6th stitch, if you count this as number 1, which lines up with the pear drop down below, and I'll explain that a little further in a minute. What we're going to do is yarn over, and we're not going to go into this vertical post. We're going to go into the row below it. This is the first of the stitches where we go down more than one row to make a pattern. And we'll see more of this as we go along in the sampler. So you've yarned over, you go through the post, you bring up a loop, then you yarn over and draw through 2. Kind of like doing a double crochet. Then we're going to do it 2 more times into that same post. Draw through 2, yarn over, go through the post a 3rd time, go through 2 loops, and then to make the cluster, you're going to yarn over and you're going to draw through all 3 of those loops, and your pear drop is made. Did I go through all 3? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's the first one. Then we're going to simple stitch into the next 3, just as you normally do. 1, yarn over, get my yarn ball loose. There we go. So we're yarning over, we're going to go down, not this one, but this one right here, which is lining up with this post on there. Sorry, I'm trying to do this through the phone. I'm having phone dyslexia. Okay, so I brought up a loop, and then I'm going to draw through those 2. Then I'm going to yarn over, and do it again. Draw through both of those. Then yarn over. Do it again. Draw through those 2. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to draw through all 3 of those to make my cluster pear drop. Okay. Then we're just going to simple stitch the rest of the way across the row here for this sample. I cannot tell you how strange this is to be looking through the phone to see my stitches. I wish there was a way I could pause when recording these so I wouldn't have to put you through the torture of watching me do this. Okay, so that's the first half of row 1 of the cluster series. The second half is your normal yarn over, draw through 2 all the way across after your initial. Okay, now for row 2, we're going to create, oh my goodness, the sun's come out. The next cluster. So there are the original 4 simple stitches I did. Then we're going to simple stitch where I did the first cluster. And the spacer in between. Alright. So now we're in, there's 3 stitches in between, and I want to be right in the middle one before I do this. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to go down 2 stitches. So we're going to go right here. And we're going to do that 3 times. I'm being blinded by the sun. It's not helping the quality of this video either, I don't think. Okay, so now I want to go through these 3. And then I'm going to simple stitch the rest of the way across, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've finished the second half of row 2, and then I've also added row 3, which is just a row of simple stitches. So now we're ready to start row 4 to do the stems on the outer 2 pear drops. Got the 4 Afghan stitches, and I'm lined up and ready to do the stem. Get some extra yarn out here. Okay, to do the stem, you yarn over twice, and then you're going to insert your needle behind both strands of the post that makes up the cluster. You want to make sure you go through 2. See, they're both there. Then you're going to yarn over and bring up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through 2. Then with your thread in the back, you're going to insert your needle into the post behind and above where you just picked up the post of the strand. You're going to yarn over, you're going to draw through that post plus the 2 loops from the previous half, and your stem is made. Then we're going to do a simple stitch 3 times. And then we'll do this. Now we're going to make the stem for the outer cluster. Yarn over twice, insert your needle behind both strands, yarn over, bring up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. For goodness sakes, what am I catching on here? And now we're going to, with the thread in the back, insert into the post above, just right there, yarn over, and then draw through that post plus the 2 loops. And then you're going to just simple stitch the rest of the way across. Yarn over and draw through 2 all the way across. Okay, and then now with the 5th row of the cluster, which is the last row of the cluster, we're going to simple stitch over until we're lined up with that middle cluster. I don't know if you can hear my dryer beeping at me. It's very annoying. Okay, so here's the one I need to be working on, which is right here. I'm going to yarn over twice, and I'm going to go through both strands. Looks like I've even caught a 3rd one there. You want to go through both. There's the 2 strands. Yarn over, bring it up, and then yarn over and draw through 2. Then we're going to go behind, and we're going to pick up this post here. We're going to yarn over, draw through that post plus the 2 loops that are on the hook. And then you do simple stitches until you get to the next cluster if you're doing several series in a row. And then, of course, when you get to the end of the row, yarn over, draw through 1, yarn over, draw through 2, all the way across. So that's essentially how you make the paired drop clusters. So now let's look at the block and talk about spacing. My blocks are 36 stitches wide and 29 rows long. Each one of these clusters takes 5 stitches. So there's 5, 10, 15, and that leaves me 21 stitches left to space out in between them and not on each end. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20 plus 1. So I chose to do, counting my first stitch is number 1, then 4 Afghan stitches, then 5 here, 5 here, and I ended up with 6 over here. Whether you put it at the beginning or the end, it doesn't matter. You could do 5 Afghan stitches plus your beginning stitch and then 5, 5, 5 if you want. What's important about this, since we're staggering rows, is that whatever you put in between here needs to be odd. And the reason is that we're doing, these are an odd number of pear drops. And you want them to center right in the middle. And so to have this fall in the middle, you need spacing equal on each side. And if you did 4 rows, it'd be kind of wonky. It'd be, you know, to the right or to the left by 1 stitch. So that's the reason for the odd number. Since these are 5 rows in height, and I'm doing 29 rows, well, there's 5, 10, 15, which leaves me 14 rows to space out between them and at the top of the bottom. I chose to do 4, 3, 3, and 4. That's 8 plus 6 is 14. However you choose to space it. I mean, that's once you figured out the size of these clusters and how many you want, you can space them however you want. I think the pattern calls for a lot less, but they're also working with less stitches. To come up, excuse me, to come up with the staggered effect, what I did, it became pretty easy for me because I ended up using 5 stitches in between and I know these are 5 stitches. It was very easy to determine where I need to start and stop. In my case, the first stitch after the previous cluster as you work your way up, which is why I liked using the simple stitch, is where I started the pear drop for the next series. Then I did 3 simple stitches, the pear stitch, which followed on the 5th stitch in between these 2 clusters, and then worked my way with 5 stitches in between, which covered this cluster, and then worked these 3 in the 5 stitches in between. And that's how I did the staggered effect. And then as you look up here, I just did this series the exact same way that I did that series. I almost forgot to mention that, how to do this staggering. Now, if you have 7 stitches in between or 9 stitches in between, then since you know this is 5, then you're going to want to start, for example, if you have 7 stitches, you're going to want to do 1 more simple stitch before you start your series of 5, and then you'll have an extra simple stitch after that falls in between these series. So it's basic math. Anyway, this is the pear drop block, block 26 of the Tunisian sampler. Thanks for watching.